What's up, everybody? It's Teague from Battle City Games. We're back today with another deck profile. As you may see, we're looking at Invoked, Dogmatika, Shaddoll today. Before we get into the profile, as always, if you enjoy the content, please hit that like button. Don't forget to leave a comment down below and subscribe so you don't miss out on future content. Alright, let's get started. Alright, so first up, you can't have any sort of Invoked deck without playing triple copies of Alistair the Invoker. I love the alternate art, so we went with the gold rares here personally. But just an insanely powerful card. We're going to see this card be abused in decks as long as Konami chooses to leave it around in the format. Moving on from there, for some of the Dogmatika cards, we are playing 2 Ecclesia. A lot of people do only play 1 Ecclesia, but I've chosen to go with 2 because we see a lot of DD Crow in the format right now, and decks like Sky Striker with Shark Cannon. And we don't want to see our only copy of Ecclesia get banished by one of those because it will hinder our copies of Nadir's Servant down the line. So we play 2 just to kind of help keep that from being an issue. Moving on from there. For some of our Shaddolls, we play double Shaddoll Windy. One vanilla Shaddoll, she's just extremely powerful with her ability to summon any Shaddoll monster from your deck and face down defense. Just one of the best cards to be sending off of your fusion cards to continue your plays going. And then we are also playing double Shaddoll Squamata. If this was more of a pure variant, I'd absolutely be playing 3 copies of this card. But because of space, trying to fit all the engines into this deck, had to make some concessions, and we decided to go ahead and cut Squamata down to 2, since we don't play quite as large of a Shaddoll package overall in the main deck. Moving on from there, for the one-ofs, for the one-of Dogmatikas, we have the 1 Maximus and the 1 Fleur-de-Lis. Fleur-de-Lis is, of course, the option that you're going to be searching usually at the end of your turn off of maybe an Ecclesia or a Titaniclad in order to give you that additional disruption during your opponent's turn. And then the Maximus is just one of your best combo starters since he's able to send some of your Shaddoll cards and your Ash Dragon from your extra deck to the graveyard to start triggering those effects. The only thing you do want to be careful of here is if you're playing against another Shaddoll or Invoke deck or Dogmatika, you don't want to potentially use Maximus because they might have something in their extra deck to send, like a Nis or something similar to that. So just be careful with Maximus, but still an extremely powerful card that we absolutely want to include. And now for the one of Shaddolls, we have the 1 Dragon, the 1 Beast, the 1 Hedgehog, and the 1 Aerial. Just some of the best Shaddolls to include in the not pure variants. We cut out Falco because Falco is really best in a pure version of Shaddolls, but Dragon, just great for the back row disruption. Beast obviously just helps you cycle your deck, and one of your best cards to pull off of your Windy so that you can get that draw 2 discard 1 down the line. Hedgehog just gets you whatever Shaddoll monster you need to your hand, or if you flip him, he can help get you your fusion spells. And then Aerial is just a great disruption for this format because of the fact that she lets you banish up to 3 cards from your opponent's graveyard. So against decks like Sky Striker or Tri-Brigade, you can really limit some of your options there. And her flip effect to actually summon a banished Shaddoll does come up in one of your combos with Construct. And then moving into the hand traps, we are going with triple copies of Ghost Bell and Haunted Mansion. Oh, a little too high there. Triple copies of Ghost Bell, and then, of course, triple copies of Ash Blossom. I believe that these are some of the best hand traps for the format right now. Ghost Bell, there's just so many cards that are graveyard reliant or want to move cards from the graveyard in the current format, that Ghost Bell is just an extremely powerful option. She's great against Tri-Brigade, she's great against Sky Striker, even Drytron when they're trying to maybe summon one from graveyard. Just so many options for Ghost Bell. And then Ash Blossom is just the most versatile hand trap. I'm pretty sure there's not a deck out there that she doesn't hit something in, which is why we go with her as well. That's going to do it for all of the monsters in the main deck. Moving on to the spells, we do have triple copies of Magical Meltdown. Just an insane field spell. The fact that this not only searches you your Alistair, but makes it so your opponent cannot respond to your fusion cards. Just means that even your stuff like Shaddoll Fusion, your El Shaddoll Fusion, and your Schism, your opponent will not have a chance to respond to those with any sort of negation, Ash Blossom, anything like that. So it just guarantees your fusion plays are going to go through. And then for the other three of, we do have triple Nadir's Servant. It's a Dogmatika variant, so you have to expect this. I know this card is still extremely pricey right now, guys. We do have that reprint hopefully coming up in the Megatins in just a month or two from the time of recording this. So if you're interested in the deck at all, don't let Nadir's Servant prevent you from trying it out. Maybe give it a shot on something like Dueling Book. Make sure you like it, and then when those reprints come around, you can go ahead and pick them up, and you'll have everything ready to go. But definitely a great card for the deck. Just gets you to your Ecclesia or whatever other Dogmatika card you need, while also working with your extra deck to trigger some effects. And then for the two ofs, of course, we've got the double Invocation. You don't really need three of this because it is highly recyclable thanks to its own effect. But just an extremely powerful card, and the fact that worst case scenario, we can use it to fusion with Shaddolls from our hand. Just means that it will almost always be live for us. And then, speaking of Shaddoll cards, we do play double Shaddoll Fusion in this variant. Again, because it's not a pure Shaddoll deck, we don't want to max out on this. Especially, it's not nearly as good going first, because Shaddoll Fusion, as you may know, gets maximum value when your opponent has an extra deck monster on board. But definitely still a strong card that we can always recur back with our Shaddoll extra deck monsters when we need to as well. And then alongside Shaddoll Fusion, we are going with double copies of El Shaddoll Fusion. I've thought about bumping this up to 3, but I haven't really found the space other than maybe bumping Fusion down to 1. But the ability to use this to go into something like a Winda or an App Cologne during your opponent's turn, or maybe to chain if they try to disrupt you during your turn. Just extremely powerful all around. Great quick play fusion spell card. Then for the last spell in the main deck, of course, we've got for 1 Terraforming. We want to get to our Magical Meltdowns as quickly as possible, so we're going to play the Terraforming to assist in that happening. Moving into the traps, first up, we've got triple copies of Infinite Impermanence. I've seen some people argue that Infinite Impermanence is not that good this format. I do not know what they are talking about, because this hits almost every major deck in the format. You can use it against Sky Striker to hit something like their Kagari or their Hayate. You can use it against Drytrons to hit their Mu Beta Fafnir, which in a lot of cases will shut off their plays. Even stuff like Tri-Brigade, where you can hit their Tri-Brigade that they summon to make them unable to use its Link ability from the graveyard. Just an all-around great hand trap, guys. I highly recommend using Impermanence this format if you have access to them. If you do not have access to Impermanence, Veiler is a suitable alternative as well, so do keep that in mind. Then from there, we do have the double copies of Dogmatika Punishment. Punishment just offers a great disruption option, since it itself will destroy a monster, and then depending on what we send from our extra deck to the graveyard, we may be able to destroy an additional card as well. Just all around solid card. Just remember, it will lock you out of your extra deck till the end of your next turn when you utilize it. And then, of course, for the last card, we've got the 1 Schism. Being able to fusion summon on your opponent's turn with this card, using materials from your graveyard even, just insanely powerful. I honestly can't believe they gave Shaddoll a card this strong. And then that secondary ability to clear a monster of the same attribute off board can always come in handy, because you can try to hold this till maybe your opponent has something that you want to clear off board, and then use the Schism and remove the threat from the field at the same time. Only 1 copy in the main deck. If you're worried about Cosmic Cyclone, I recommend side decking a 2nd copy so you can bring that in if you've seen the Cyclones. Moving into the extra deck now, of course, we're going to start out with our Link monsters, because we do not have that many, in all honesty. And first up is going to be Gravity Controller. This is just useful because it does help get your construct to graveyard on your first turn in order to add back your Schism. You want to have multiple combo lines in the deck so that if you get disrupted on one front, you still have the ability to go other routes. And being able to get your Schism to graveyard and then recur it turn 1 with Construct. Her ability means that you can still set up to summon Winda on your opponent's turn. And then for the other Link monster, we do have one Artemis from match just Moonmane, of course. Just a light monster that we can make off of a single Alistair. Guarantees that we can always go into Makaba once we have access to Alistair. You don't have to play the Almaraz Secure Gardener combo anymore, which frees up that extra slot in the extra deck. And that's going to do it for the links. Moving on into the fusions, starting out with the Shaddolls. Of course, we've got double Construct. Would like to play 3, but it's not absolutely necessary in this variant because you have so many other options to go into. But Construct, as always, just an insanely powerful card. And you will usually use one of these in your combo, so you want to make sure you have the additional one to summon out later on. From there, we do also have double El Shaddoll App Cologne. Again, usually you use one of these in your combo in order to search for Schism and then discard it to the graveyard. But she actually just has an extremely powerful ability that when she is fusion summoned, you can target a face-up monster your opponent controls and negate its effects, which just means that you can use her as disruption during your opponent's turn if you bring her out with something like El Shaddoll Fusion or Schism. So just keep that in mind. And then for the last Shaddoll card, of course, Winda. A lot of people calling for this card to be banned because of her somewhat floodgate status. But so far, Konami has let us keep her, which is great for Shaddoll lovers. But just an insanely powerful card. Most decks, if you're able to limit them to that one special summon, they're not going to be able to play around that, and they're going to have to find a way to remove the Winda before they can really do anything else. And then, of course, it's an Invoked deck, so we are playing double Makaba. You're not really going to ever need the third Makaba. I guess maybe if you got in an insanely long grind game, it could come in handy, but space is tight, so we're going with 2. And you should always have access to it when you need it. Usually 1 on your first turn if you open with Alistair, and then 1 a little bit later on. Then from there, we do have the 1 Invoked Aguadius. A little bit easier to summon in this variant of the deck than some others because we are dumping so many fusion cards to our graveyard, thanks to cards like Maximus and Nadir's Servant. So we can easily get the Aguadius out, and it's just an insanely powerful card, being able to pop cards on summon, and then to banish a fusion monster in order to boost its own attack makes it a great OTK enabler as well. And then for our Dogmatika punishment and some other Nadir's Servant targets, we have double Elder Entity Nis, we have the Titaniclad, the Ash Dragon, and we are playing 1 Fossil Warrior Skull Knight. So Nis, obviously you send this off of punishment usually during your opponent's turn to turn punishment into a double destruction. Titaniclad is what you usually want to send on your first turn with Maximus in order to search your Ecclesia during your end phase, which will then search your Fleur-de-Lis. Fossil Warrior Skull Knight is a card that I really like to include in decks playing Nadir's Servant and Punishment. Because if you want to use something like Servant during your turn, maybe later in the game, you can send the Skull Knight and still get that pop. It's kind of a third Nis, but it gives you that little bit of ability to kind of wait and use it when you want, rather than having to use it directly when it's sent. And that's going to wrap up the profile, guys. Let me know what you think of the deck in the comments down below. I love Dogmatika. I love Shaddoll, and Invoked has some really awesome mechanics, so I'm really happy to be able to combine all 3 of those archetypes into something so amazing. And we actually have that new support coming up in Dawn of Majesty, the Despia monsters, which is the next step in the Dogmatika storyline. You can bet we'll be having a profile for that as soon as possible, so make sure that you're subscribed so you don't miss out. Till next time, I'm Teague with Battle City Games.